It's Saturday, November 8th, and I'm seeing a number of dire warnings as I'm trolling the news trying to make sense of what's going on for you. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. So we'll start here. The man on the thumbnail title that you see here, this is the Swedish Prime Minister. His name is Ulf Kristersson, and he has called for preparations to be made for Russia's long-term isolation. That is, Russia's not going away. They need to be isolated. This war is not going to be the end of it, he said. Listen, we have never had greater control over the Baltic Sea, and this, of course, irritates Russia. This is our sea. I firmly believe that Sweden, Estonia, and other European Union countries must prepare for Russia's long-term isolation. And he's talking about in the Baltic Sea. This war will not be the end of it. And that's not the only dire warning. And the Europeans are also taking actions about things too. The European Commission ended multiple entry Schengen visas. Schengen means like you can travel wherever you want. Once you're in Europe, you can go wherever you want in Europe. Kind of like in the United States. If you land in New Jersey, you can travel to Florida or California or anywhere in between. Schengen visas for Russian citizens, requiring Russians to apply for a new visa for each trip to EU territory. The policy change responds to documented threats, including sabotage operations, which we've seen dozens of over the last few months, espionage activities, and weaponized migration by Russian actors in Europe. The new system ensures more frequent security screenings rather than allowing extended access through multiple entry visas. The measure builds on earlier restrictions by individual EU states. Estonia, Latvia, Finland, and Poland have already tightened visa access or closed borders to most Russian visitors since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. So the European Union's thinking about this in a big way. Now, Pete Hegseth, he's joining this chorus of saying, hey, we have to be prepared. Pentagon chief urges the U.S. to prepare for war. Pete Hegseth said that America must be ready to deter adversaries and respond to any threats. According to him, the Pentagon and the defense industry must work together rather than slow down progress. He says this is a 1939 moment. Well, I mean, we're talking about the cusp of World War II when we're talking about 1939, or hopefully a 1981 moment. Here we're talking about Reagan in office, building up to deter Russia with peace through strength. A time of growing urgency. Enemies are uniting. Threats are rising. You feel it. I feel it. If we want to prevent war and avoid it, which is what we all want, we must prepare now, Hegseth said. He stressed that this is not about minor adjustments, but a complete transformation of the U.S. military. Quote, our troops must have the strength not only to deter aggression, but to decisively defeat any enemy who dares to challenge America. So that's a second dire warning. Here's another dire warning. General warns Putin of strategic defeat, as Russia has no operational tactical successes. Now, this comes from London Loves Business. I know nothing about that article, but Sean Pinner, I just talked about a Sean Pinner article the other day. Sean Pinner is he's British, but he's a former Ukrainian Marine. Okay. A Russian general has launched a scathing attack on Vladimir Putin, warning him that Russia is facing strategic defeat. His name is Leonid Ivashov. Ivashov warned in 2022 when Putin launched his full-scale war that this will, quote, threaten the very existence of Russia, unquote. He now firmly believes that Russia will collapse. That's quite a warning. So Putin can't stop because if he stops and loses, Russia collapses. That's bad for him. According to Vladimir Putin's statements, a strategic defeat will lead to Russia's collapse. However, there is no clarification of what's meant by strategic defeat. He then scorned Putin over his constant nuclear rhetorics. He said, the Kremlin has been touting its latest missile developments, such as Brevesnik and Poseidon. We cling to the missile of Brevesnik and other nuclear torpedo Poseidon like a plaster cast. In reality, the United States will be able to destroy us before these reach their targets, if we even manage to fire them. He said Russian force may capture the critical city of Pokrovsk, which is the gateway to Donetsk. But he said even if it's taken, it will be irrelevant. That we advance somewhere near Pokrovsk is only a tactical success. We have no operational tactical success. And at the strategic level, we have suffered defeat in every direction. Now, the reason that this is a dire warning is because Putin can't abide that. Putin has to show that he's gotten something out of all the loss of treasure and blood. Okay, Zelensky says that he could get Tomahawks if President Trump gives the green light. Producers are ready to sell. Remember, he was meeting with producers of military equipment companies or military supply companies. I'm not sure I have the right term. We also discussed the systems, not just Tomahawks, that offer strong long-range capabilities. We're interested in a full package of options. They are. And if they had long-range missiles, they would be bringing the fight to Russia. And if they had Patriot missiles, they wouldn't be in the dark right now. U.S. has granted Viktor Orban's Hungary a one-year exemption from sanctions on Russian oil and gas imports, allowing continued access through the Druzhba pipeline and Turk Stream pipeline. Good reason for Ukraine to completely take out the Druzhba pipeline. Okay, so Orban met with Trump, and these guys really like each other. I don't know why. I don't understand what the affinity is, but here's the Druzhba pipeline. It goes through Russia, and then it branches off right here and goes up to Latvia and Lithuania and Poland and Czech Republic and Hungary. But the only one complaining about it is Hungary. The Czech Republic is also landlocked too, but they're not complaining about it. Poland's not complaining about it. Baltic states aren't. So if they just destroy the pipeline somewhere here in Russia, it puts all the lights out, or well, not the lights out, the gas, the oil pipeline, whatever. It's all dead in the water. This all runs through Ukraine too. They could destroy it here, but destroying it here also hurts Russia more. And so that's probably what you'll see if Ukraine attacks it. Now, Ukraine has secured its pipelines for, like, say, liquefied natural gas through Greek terminals under a memorandum signed between Navigats and Atlantic Sea LNG trade that extends until 2050. They're good with that. The problem that Ukraine's going to face is the thermal power plant generation stations been just pummeled in recent days, especially just last night. Okay, let's move on to the next story. Denmark spends more of its GDP on Ukraine, 2.9%, than some NATO allies spend on their own defense. Well, this was a reply to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was saying Denmark's not doing its job. It's not being a good ally, and maybe we need to take more interest in Greenland. I don't know why they keep talking about Greenland. I really don't. But okay, Denmark spends more of its GDP, 2.9%, on Ukraine than many allies spend on their own defense. Thank you, Denmark. Denmark's really doing a great job. Now, when we're talking about J.D. Vance, saw this as well. Rubio names Vance as a leading candidate for a 2028 U.S. presidential race. That's terrible. According to Politico, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that he would support J.D. Vance if he decides to run for president in 2028. So now, Donald Trump had earlier talked about Vance and Rubio as his likely successors. Vance himself stresses that there's no rivalry, says that they're close friends. Okay. I know that many of you that watch this are not Americans. Let me give you some background. J.D. Vance has not been in the Senate very long. He's supported by the tech bros, like the billionaire tech kind of moguls. That's where his background comes from. Marco Rubio has been in the Senate for, I don't know how long, 20 years or something like that. It's been a while. I actually voted for Marco Rubio in the 2016 election in the primary when it was Rubio or Trump or whoever else. And Rubio is about the only guy in the administration that really kind of still gets it and is tilted toward Ukraine. Despite some statements, he has fundamental aversion to communism, Soviet stuff, that sort of thing. He still gets it. Keith Kellogg is probably the only other character here with it. J.D. Vance is more MAGA, or will be more MAGA, than President Trump in many ways, and that would be pretty awful. So we'll see how that all plays out. Lithuania may completely halt the transit of Belarusian cargo. The Lithuanian government is considering a full stop of rail freight from Belarus. If approved, this would deal another blow to Lukashenko's regime, whose export routes have already been crippled by sanctions. Remember, they go from Kaliningrad through Lithuania into Belarus or vice versa. A day earlier, Minsk refused to reopen a border crossing, and Lithuanian Prime Minister was here visiting the border. And they've closed all the borders. They put dragon's teeth and all that kind of thing. They closed a bridge on the Kaliningrad side from Russian traffic into Lithuania. They're serious about this. And this kind of thing could be something that draws us into a bigger conflict as well. Unsurprisingly, Robert Fico says that Slovakia will not support the EU plan to use Russian frozen assets to fund Ukraine's defense needs. Nothing new there. But what was new was that the Polish Sejm, that's their parliament, has rejected the president's proposal to criminalize Bandera propaganda, but it did tighten access to social aid for Ukrainians. The Polish parliament has approved amendments that restrict access to social assistance for Ukrainians living in the country. Only those who are officially employed and whose children attend Polish schools are eligible. Exceptions will apply only to families raising children with disabilities. Unemployed Ukrainians will lose access to several benefits, including medical rehabilitation, addiction treatment, participation in public health programs, certain dental services. At the same time, they did reject laws that were going to tighten down on Bandera ideology and tougher penalties for illegal border crossings for Ukrainians. So it could have been worse, but that was not the greatest sign for Ukraine. Now, strangely enough, while that wasn't a great sign, Serbia was a great sign. On Monday, Serbia said that they were okay with ammunition going to Ukraine. On Wednesday, Serbia had a call with Ukraine where both agreed to work on their shared interest in regional security. Yesterday, Serbia said that they may join Russian sanctions, like Europeans on Russian sanctions. Okay, we're not exactly sure what's going on here. Serbian President Alexander Vučić said that the decision not to impose sanctions against Russia could be reconsidered. The government has the right to change its decision adopted by National Security Council. So I'm not sure exactly if they pivoted this with pro-Ukrainian or pro-Russian here. It's hard to understand, and okay. But Serbia, I mean, they've always been in Russia's corner, so it's hard to determine what exactly is going on. Okay, last little bit, Darth Putin. After I give my shout out to Jens Groth, graduate Patreon member, thank you, Jens. On this day in 2005, Nord Stream 1 was signed. Not even our ongoing butchery of Chechens or future invasion of Georgia would stop cheap gas. Except it wasn't cheap. You just thought it was. That's right. Like the business deal. If you had given the sanctions earlier, we wonder if we'd still be here. You thought trade with us would make us more liberal. In fact, we learned that you didn't care about our barbarities, so we took it as a green light to do it again. So we did. Yeah, I think that's where we are. All right, my friends, tell me what you thought about what you saw here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.